I could show you, I would show you.
Hi, my name is Rozella Kim, born and raised in Korea, now based in New York. I'm a creative producer specializing in fashion media and events. I moved here about 10 years ago to Seattle, and then I went to school in Rhode Island School of Design, and then moved here to New York.
How did you get involved in creative direction?
Yeah, so my first ever role in fashion was art directing, and it happened somewhat randomly because I originally went to school for painting, and that's what I imagined my whole future would be in. And then I'm a big advocate for always saying yes to things, especially when it comes to projects. So when this opportunity for a fashion brand as an art director fell on my lap, I of course said yes and went on it, and that was my first ever project in the industry and also first ever project in film and creative production, because even though I've always been passionate about filmmaking and storytelling, it was always for personal projects. So that was kind of how I got started, and ever since I loved the collaborative aspect of everyone working together, so I just stuck with it and pursued other roles in the industry. And so now I do creative production, event management, and partnerships. My first ever, step into event production was this organization called Fashion at Brown University. It's a fashion organization consisting of 600 active student members with 12 different departments. So it was quite a production considering that it was a college organization. But I ended up being a president for Fashion at Brown and got to organize Ivy League's first ever intercollegiate runway show featuring Brown University, Yale, Parsons, and Rhode Island School of Design. And it was about, I can't recall exactly right now, but it was about 120 designers and 120 looks and 40 different designers. And then I was really happy because it ended up getting featured on WWD and Vogue, because that meant that it resonated with the wider audience. And that was really my goal that initiated the project, to really provide spotlight for student designers that might not have the platform otherwise.
I think a lot of people don't see events and just creating an environment for people to have fun and stuff like that as an art form. But how do you approach that?
Yes, I think for me, artwork, it's a successful art piece when you get to not only execute your own vision, but bring the vision of everyone around you and make it into a cohesive piece that resonates with the wider audience. So rather that be painting or filmmaking or events, it's all just different forms of storytelling. And events is just one of them. So I don't really see a big difference between, let's say, traditional filmmaking versus event production.
What are some things that a great event needs? If it doesn't have it, it's just not a good event.
Details oftentimes make the whole event. And what I want to execute in events is to create a memorable experiences for people to feel special. So rather that be all the individual people coming to events, leaving with the impactful resonance to what the event was about, or even them just coming in to have a good time and leaving with a good memory or connecting with people that they feel inspired by. I would say hospitality, in terms of how the clients or audience or every people who comes in the door are greeted and made sure that it's catered to the experience that they wanted to get. If it's an event specifically for a brand, making sure that the message or the experience that people are getting out of that event is aligned with the brand mission.
Tell me about coming to America and just entering a creative space. Is it very different from where you're from? And Have you felt restricted, liberated, anything like that?
Yeah, totally. I actually came to US on my own when I was 12, and my parents ended up joining me later on. But I often tell this story, and people are like, why'd you move on your own at such a young age? But I think the main motive was because I always knew that I wanted more for myself growing up. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew that in Korea, I think there were a lot of people around me that were well-to-do, but I think I noticed that in Korea, when you're successful, you kind of stay within Korea. It feels like a smaller audience for sure, and that's what initiated me to want to come here. And I'm very grateful that my parents were supportive of that and had a lot of trust in me to come here on my own.
That's crazy. 12 is actually insane. Why do you think your parents trusted you, and how do you think your parents' belief in you at such a young age has impacted your belief in yourself?
I'm not sure if it's something specific that I did because I was, so young that there wasn't anything grand that I did to gain their trust, but I think it just stems within our relationship that I had with my parents, and I would say my whole family is quite independent, so the way I approach things, I think they saw that it was quite similar to how they approach things. So,
talk to me about your podcast.
Me and my friends started a podcast called Spotlight of Fashion, and our goal is to spotlight industry professionals, rather within or outside the realm of fashion industry. So that could be artists or writers and just anyone that feels resonant to the fashion industry. And our podcast is bringing spotlight onto their journey and how they got started, what they do, and similar to your platform, in sharing advice for other younger creatives that are uprising and how they can better prepare themselves for the industry.
And what inspired you to come up with that, or to give back to the community in that way?
Yes, it was really a collaborative framework between me and my friends. But I think we all acknowledged that fashion industry is very relationship driven, but at the same time, it can be approached or seen as a very gate-kept community, and recognizing the importance of drawing knowledge from people around you and learning through the people's past steps and journey. That was something that was very important for four of us: me, June, Dory, and Karma.
You do so many different things, but what would you say you're chosen for? Like, what is your purpose, or the uniting purpose, that the one thing that is like the underbelly of everything that you do, and why do you feel you're chosen for it?
I'll answer that by talking about why I wanted to come into fashion. I think I noted it before, but the big piece of it was the access to work with so many different people, right? With painting, it's a very independent, individual process. That's what kind of opened my eyes going into filmmaking and seeing how many different people get to work on this one project. And even though it's one vision, a lot of people come together to create that one piece. So fashion industry, I was really drawn to the fact that I get to work with so many different people, and I was thinking about what my idea of success is to answer that question. And I think it's really when I get to connect different people. And this is something that I heard from my mentor that really stuck with me, and it's that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you need to have people around you to go together. And that's something that I always reminded myself going into the industry.
So within your journey, have you taken a bunch of L's? You know, people take a lot of They have a lot of moments where they fail and where they feel like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
So can you describe any of those moments?
One L that I can think of was during Paris Fashion Week when I was working as an event photographer for this VIP event, brand event. I will say, for context, I was, jumping from places to places, and that was one of the last events that I was working for. But thankfully, before, I had a bit of a time to go back to the hotel and freshen up and charge my camera, which was almost dying, so that was very important. So after I rush to the event, I get there on time, and I reach into my bag to get my camera equipment set up before my coat check, and I realize I left my camera battery in the hotel room. Mind you, the hotel is a 40-minute drive away from the event, so there was no way I could have gone back to the hotel and grabbed it, because that would have been 80 minutes just in the transition. And there was one other photographer that was working with me that night. It was me and her, and she also didn't have an extra battery. And there was no way I was gonna ask my boss that I forgot my camera battery, because that's unprofessional, and I didn't want to reflect that on myself, because usually I'm very type A, I'm very prepared, I'm usually the mom of the group, I'm always over prepared. I just needed to figure it out, and I knew I was going to figure it out because I always do. But knowing that I didn't really have any option but to outsource, I just told them I needed a bathroom break. I went downstairs. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I didn't have a plan. I just went downstairs. And I didn't have any friends in Paris at the time, because that was my first fashion week in Paris. And not being a local, I asked the doorman who was doing working the event as well. And I just asked him if he, by chance, randomly happened to have a camera battery. I don't know if he ended up working as a photographer before the event, but I asked him, and he said that he has a lot of photographer friends in the area that might have the battery. So he asked me what kind of camera I use, and thankfully within the next 15 minutes I got my battery. Thank goodness. And then I went up acting like nothing happened, and I started shooting. But that was, I would say, an L that I always think about before I go into a shoot, and I always double check my bag from now on, triple checking if anything. As I mentioned before, a lot of the projects or clients that I do have now were self-initiated at the beginning. So my first ever Paris Fashion Week, I always wanted to go ever since I started working in fashion. That was a dream. But I was also still in school at the time, and I couldn't, and it was during like couple days before my midterm season, so I couldn't really reason myself to go abroad and work Paris Fashion Week when I had midterms to get to. So I kept making excuses for myself, but then the night before the first day of Paris Fashion Week, I told myself, if there's a reason why I want to go, if I want to go so badly, there is probably the universal reason why I should be there. Because growing up, my mom used to always tell me that if it's an experience that you want, always say yes. If you're questioning whether you should go or not, always go, because you don't regret what you did, you always regret what you didn't do. I booked my ticket the night before the event week. I packed, and I had class critique for my film project. So I literally brought my luggage to school. And I went straight to the airport after the crit, and then at the airport, while I was waiting for my flight, I looked up all the contacts I could find, and I emailed, I think, about 50 different people. I was like, this is what I do. I would love to help out in any way. So, fingers crossed, I hopped on the flight, you know, couldn't really check anything. I got a response from an art director at this brand called Boyrovskaya, and they were telling me that their videographer got sick last minute and they were looking for someone to fill his position. So, and that was an event about an hour or so after I had landed. So I went straight to the hotel, dropped off my stuff, got my equipment, and went straight to the event. After some outfit changes, of course. But when I went there, I was really grateful because considering that we've never met and considering that it was our first time really speaking to each other than the one exchange of an email, he had a lot of trust in me and my vision and really just gave me his full responsibility.
Do you have any advice for, you know, maybe someone that wants to follow in your footsteps or just enter the world of fashion and they just need some encouraging words, if you have anything?
Yes, I would say do it regardless of your external factors, as in if it's event production you want to do or experience design that you want to do and you're just starting out and you may not have clients and that's, you know, a defeating factor of yours, just pick a client of your dream and create a portfolio for yourself and just make work. And if you put a lot of time into what you love doing, it'll resonate with people around you, and at some point those dream clients of yours will see that and it will happen. I'm a big believer of the energy you put out comes back to you. And also just reach out. I think people underestimate the power of building relationships, and I think that was a huge key for my own career journey, and just reaching out to, like, cold email different people, and it could be a small 15-minute coffee chat. Just meet with them and ask how they got started and learn from their journeys, and that I think will take them very far.
Okay, perfect. And say bye.
Bye. Thank you. What was the question again?
No,
What it felt to be with me.